Hello, I'm David Coulthard, a former Grand Prix driver, and courtesy of CarNext.com, we have a fantastic opportunity to challenge a father and son Formula One duo on the difference between Formula One in the past and today. So I've got Jos Verstappen, someone that I raced against. Don't think we crashed together, or maybe we did.
No, we were fine.
We were fine together. And Max Verstappen, current racer for Red Bull Racing. So, gentlemen, let's get straight into it. So one of the common things that people would ask is that a driver wouldn't be able to cut it in my time. Now, Max, do you really think that you would be as good in your father and I's time?
Oh, it's difficult. Different cars, yeah. To be honest, I think if you're good, you can adapt to any car. If it's a Formula One car or like a GT car, you just have to adapt to the situation. And even now, I mean, when I started in 2015 to the car we have now, it's quite different. So also the way you were driving it was quite different. So I guess, yeah, you adjust yourself to it, hopefully.
When I look at like in-car footage today, and I look at in-car footage from when we were racing, and even before us, when you go back to the Senna times, when the manual shifts, there was so much kickback in the steering. It looked physically more difficult. So, Jos, you do occasionally jump in some modern, let's say, sports touring cars, GT cars.
Yeah. I think it was definitely more physically. I mean, for your arms and things like that. I think the G-forces they do today, I think they're higher than in our time. But knowing him, I think he would have adapted to the cars at our time, let's say like that. So
they were moving around a lot more, though.
Yeah,
Even on the straight.
I think they were more nervous than now. If you see now, it's like, small oversteer, but we are fighting the car more. Also, I think because they were not so balanced as they were those days. So, but I think definitely more challenging at our time.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that even the straights were quite difficult, or certainly the way I drove, the car was moving around a lot.
Depends on the night before.
Depends on the night before, yeah, because
but it's
different time.
Also, when you see the Senna thing, go like this and shifting, and it was tougher, I think.
So I think we can agree then that physically the G-force, especially in qualifying, is much higher today. You look at the lap times, you've got big wings, big tyres. But I think that we would also agree that the actual race in our period was maybe more difficult because the cars moved more and we had lighter cars. You're 730 kilograms or whatever the regulation is today.
Yeah.
We were 605 kilos, maybe even lighter if you were with, Tom Walkinshaw and Arrows. Sometimes they were running below the limit. But they were racy, small cars.
Yeah, and without the power steering. I think I sometimes had very hard time. I think Brazil was, for me, the toughest. With no power steering, left-hand circuit, it was very difficult.
Yeah, I used to wear a neck strap under my arm.
I never did that.
You just rested it?
Yeah, I was
just
leaning on it, but even on the braking then I was to come up and then make the corner, but then because the neck is tired, your shoulders are tired, it goes down. I couldn't even move anymore after the race. So. Yeah.
How, your career was, you didn't always have the best car. You started with a very good team, and then after that it became a bit more challenging.
Worse and worse.
It got being worse and worse, your words. Physically, where do you think you were at that time? Because we know Max is an athlete, we see him training, we see all the work that the young modern drivers do. I was probably at a crossover point where I had a professional trainer. Where were you? You always looked strong, but were you?
Yeah, but
fit?
I didn't have the trainer at home at the time, so I was relying on myself, what I knew about it, but it's definitely not as professional as the work they do today, because they have the trainer around, they do the tests before the season, during the season, after the season, so they know exactly where you are physically, but we haven't done any tests. If you had to do a test, you had to do it for yourself. I did it a few times, but I don't know how physically good I was. But I always had problems with my neck because I always had the G-forces. I couldn't stand that well. But he never complains about his neck. So I think physically,
me, you've got a big neck as well.
Sorry. No, but I don't know. For sure, the work they do now is so much more professional than at my time.
So physically, you always look like you could go again. I don't think I've actually seen you look tired at the end of a Grand Prix. So would you say that's down to the modern cars, like your father saying, with power steering, Or is it just that your capacity to deal with what's going on, like everything in sport, it evolves over time?
Yeah, I guess it's a bit of both. I mean, to be honest, even in like F3 or whatever, I never really struggled. But for sure, the power steering helps a lot because it takes a lot of force away from the shoulders. And of course, when the shoulders get tight, it's going through your neck. That helps. But I think also the way of training my neck these days, I think, is, you know, I have like this kind of harness, and it seems like it's very effective. You can do all different kinds of rotations. So it seems like that is working quite well. But yeah, I mean, some people just struggle a bit more with their neck, even if they train very hard. It just depends also on the length of your neck, and of course how heavy your head is. But
drivers have big brains.
But it does make a difference. But yeah, luckily, no issues there.
So you actually harnessed. You put a big strap to your head when you're training.
Yeah, it's like device you put on your head, and you can basically, like, that thing can go 360 degrees. I mean, not that I can do that, but at least you can turn it around in all different kind of ways. You can do all different kind of movements, and that seems to work well.
Very impressive. The only time I've ever had any sort of straps and what have you, it was purely for the bedroom. But anyway, that's a different interview. So, now, just focusing on where we are in Formula One today, and I'm interested, Jos, first of all, from you, because I have some views on some of the regulations in Formula One. So, if you, looking today at your son out on track, putting that to one side, what would be a regulation that you would change in modern Formula One that either takes us back to where we were or takes us forward if you have a vision?
Probably take it somewhere in the middle, but all the buttons they have to change during a lap and charging battery and things like that. I don't like that so much. No, I prefer the one we had in my time. Let's say like that. It's too much. Sometimes I'm listening to his radio. I don't understand what they're talking about.
Oh, but I was just saying.
No, but it's too much. You know, they have to change so many things, and I think it should go back a bit more normal, let's say like that.
Yeah. So in an average lap, you would always have to adjust something in the cockpit to do with harvesting power or deploying energy?
So in the race, for example, I mean, you have different modes with the battery level. So I know the modes where, you know, it's sustainable, so it just stays at a similar level throughout the lap. So, but then also, let's say with 2 laps to go or whatever, you can go through a different mode and it will drain the battery slowly. So it's just, you read through what they tell you, of course. And of course, I mean, I'm at the team now for my 5th year, so you know exactly how it works. Because even when we swapped engines, we kept the same kind of operating in the team, which I think is good. But yeah, I mean, I would prefer that it's just a normal engine. You can go flat out. You don't need to worry about certain engine modes, and you can just push.
Do you ever get battery anxiety like we do with our mobile phones, or that doesn't happen?
Well, sometimes, you know, when you retire the car, you're like, should I jump out without touching, or should I just, you know, stuff like that when they're working on the car.
But no electric shock so far?
Luckily not.
Good. Another thing that you use...
It would kill you. If you get it in Formula 1, yeah, it would kill you. You're dead.
Yeah. Well, I guess on the upside, you only die once. So, yeah. And we you know,
unless you're
do it in a good way.
Unless you're like a cat, you're
like a cartoon, you'd be like. Anyway, one of the modern regulations that brought into play to try and improve the racing is DRS. So we know we've got the hybrid engines. We had to do it old school, which was to get yourself into a slipstreaming position. DRS. You just accept it's there and it's a benefit, or? Well,
we have to at the moment with the cars we have, because once you're within like 2.5, 3 seconds, you already start to lose downforce. So when you're within 1 second, the car loses like 70-80% of its downforce. So it's incredible. Like it's a completely different car. It's almost like very uncontrollable as well, because you have the car is just moving around a lot. So that's the only way of overtaking, to be honest, at the moment. Of course, I would like to see it without, but I think then you have to change the cars a lot because I think they are really wide at the moment. I think we should go back to a bit more of a narrow car, and the car is also very long. So I honestly prefer the cars how they were like 2006, 2007. I think that was a very beautiful car.
It's interesting, isn't it, that he's winning, he's successful in Formula One today, but there was something about, you know, even beyond our era, that was quite special about Formula One. Light, narrow, racy cars.
Engines, the noise.
Yeah.
V10 would be nice, yeah.
Yeah, well, did you race V10? I started with the V10. Were you
I think
V8 already?
I had a V10.
Yeah, V10.
Yeah, we had V10s and
abs-
V8s.
Yeah. And
That was good.
we used to blow engines up in those days, like proper bits of
proper
piston
fire,
bouncing down.
smoke and things like that.
Smoke.
No, but when we were testing in, let's for example, in Barcelona, and you were sitting in your motorhome and you hear a car going out with a noise, that was, the hair came, up. And now you can stay next to the track making a phone call. It's no problem. But at our time, it was not possible. And I think that was Formula One.
Well,
I like that.
I think it creates emotion, isn't it? Like, where was it when we were in Mugello? The old Ferrari F1 car was on the track from 2004. I mean, the car was slow on the straight compared to what we do, but it's just incredible, the noise. Like, it just makes a Formula One car, I think.
Yeah.
That's, I think, what we miss at the moment.
Yeah, I think that there's not many of the fans of Formula One wouldn't agree with you.
It doesn't matter if you go 300 or 360. If you don't have the sound of the engine...
And the emotion, what it brings.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I liken it to, and I don't want to say anything inappropriate, of course, but it's a little bit like if you're making love, there has to be a certain natural soundtrack to that moment. But if you make love in a caravan when your mum and dad are in the next room,
it's a bit different.
It's different. So it's anyway. So we agree. More noise.
I like the comparison.
Good. Yeah, thank you. I like to keep it, in a way that people can relate to. Probably. Well, caravans are they not very popular with the Dutch?
Yeah, we had one. In go-karting?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. They're very popular, David.
Yeah, good. Bit of camping. Right, moving on to the next sort of statement to challenge you here is that Formula One should be about pushing the limits in every aspect. And modern Formula One, we've touched on this a little bit now, heavier, you've got to manage battery, you've got to manage starting with 100 kilograms of fuel. So I'm picking up from our initial conversation that you would agree that modern Formula One is more about managing than pushing 100%.
Yeah, I mean, in the race nowadays, you want to do a one-stop because the problem is you can't really pass with these kind of cars on most of the tracks. So what you do, you just back it out a bit. You know that the guy behind will get stuck. You just make sure you have the tire life to go to the end after your stop. So, and of course, at some tracks we have to lift for fuel because the fuel tank is not big enough to go flat out all the time. So I would, of course, always prefer to go flat out. Like we had in Germany, to be honest, there was last 12 laps, low fuel, we had new tires, and then you're pushing. Then you can see also the lap times were coming down, and we were only 2.5, 3 seconds, I think, off, 2.5 of what we did in qualifying. I think that's not too bad.
Yeah. Well, I think in our time, then we would be within a couple of seconds of qualifying pace. Because the cars were lighter, so I guess
and also the refueling.
We never managed, didn't we?
And also refueling, we had to push all the time.
Yeah.
So that was good, and that's how the racing should be. You have to push and go to the limit.
It will also be better anyway on the tires if the car is a lot lighter.
Yeah. No, we didn't. I mean, now is all the things about tire management, fuel saving. We didn't do any of that. So
the race started. You went as quickly as you could.
Of course, yeah.
To the end. When you mentioned refueling, we couldn't chat to you without mentioning Hockenheim when you lost your eyebrows briefly. Thankfully, they look like they're back, but that was when a refueling goes wrong. So I guess that's one of the reasons they took it away. But just because you lost your eyebrows, that doesn't seem that they should have taken it away from Formula One completely.
No, I think it should be there, or. I mean, but at least, go flat out all the time. Even when they run with 100 kilos of fuel, if you have the tires, and they shouldn't do it about fuel saving or whatever, I think it's racing, it's Formula One, it's the highest in the world, and they should go flat out all the time, pushing the limits.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And watching the way you race, I think you would definitely enjoy that, because some of the let's say, the more height challenge drivers don't look as physically strong. I don't want to seem heightist, but I've always, and I don't know if you get it when people meet you, they've seen you on television and you're a little bit taller than your father, but I get it where people will say, oh, you're taller than I would imagine for a racing driver. And I'll always say, well, in my time, it was quite difficult to fit in the cars. Yeah. We didn't have the big cockpits that they have today. But then I will always say that the downside is that you struggle to fit in the cars while you race, but the upside is when you retire, you're not one of these little guys. So, you know.
Yeah, I think I'm 181, so I'm fine. But of course, when you get to like 186, 188, you struggle with your knees. You know, everything is of course going to become a bit tighter. Also, your feet can't be too big.
That's why I had a problem. My feet were always too big. I had to cut the top of the shoe off and things like that.
You know what they say about a man with big feet?
I know that.
So you were quite happy you had to cut the top of your boots
I
while
didn't
you were
mind
racing.
at all.
Yeah, no, that's a different time. In terms of weight, again, touching to our era, if we were, more than 75 kilos with a race suit and helmet, then we lost some performance with ballast on the car. Is it a weight issue for drivers today, or can you be comfortably?
Yeah, because the cars are very heavy. It's very difficult for the teams to be on the weight target. What the FIA, of course, brings out. Nowadays it's 80 kilos, but your seat is included, and your seat is almost 2 kilos, like 1.92 kilos. So you can be 78. I'm 78, so it's it's on the edge.
Yeah. Okay.
But some drivers they're like 70 kilos, 71, but they're also 172 or 73, so they're a bit smaller.
Yeah.
But then, the taller drivers, they of course automatically are on the limit. Yeah.
They're so little, aren't they? So
Most
cute.
of them are.
So cute.
Some of them.
Yeah. Anyway.
Oh, it's nothing compared to MotoGP. They are very small.
Yeah.
That's quite impressive.
Yeah, Marquez is tiny, isn't he? Yeah.
But then you see how strong they are.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
Well, when you mention that, so this is a small version of your race helmet, but this is actually the Lando Norris real size helmet. he's really that small, or Marc Marquez. And we can see a couple of helmets here. We've got Joss's helmet from
Canada.
Was that a good result?
2000, I don't know.
P6.
2000, I think, P5.
Must have been for what is it?
For the football, we did that.
European?
It was a European championship.
Is that European?
I think the evening before they lost, so they were out, and I wear this helmet.
Yeah, it's
on
European.
Sunday.
Yeah. Orange is a very popular colour in your country.
Yeah, that's why. That's why it's orange.
Simple.
Yes.
Right, moving on. Another one of the statements here is that the drivers these days don't think for themselves, but are hand puppets for the team. Now, I wouldn't say that. One, because you're younger, stronger, taller and fitter, and I don't want you to punch me. But someone obviously thinks that, the eras have changed, whereas maybe the drivers were more outspoken in the past, more individual. Your view on that, first of all. I don't think you seem like anyone's controlling you like a puppet.
Well, no, definitely not. Not a puppet. But I'm very straightforward, I think. Sometimes, you maybe say to yourself, maybe it's better to be a little bit quiet, but I'm there to win, and if I wouldn't have that desire to be there and just say, it's fine, then I think it's better to just stop, because then the fire is not there, I want to win, I want the best. They expect me to do my best, and I expect them to do their best. And of course, when one of the two is not performing well, they can tell me when I, of course, make a mistake, which they have done in the past, and it should be like that. But at the end of the day, you should be able to be critical to each other, because that, at the end of the day, pushes you forward. Like, if you are not able to talk to each other and be critical, then what's the point of working together? So.
Yeah. One of the things that I always say is that Formula One doesn't have a blame culture, it has a responsibility culture. We own our mistakes. What would you say, Jos, from your time? I never remember you being sort of, making a big scene or a big complaint.
I was not in the position to do that, I think. Yeah. I think when you're in a position to do that, and you can speak up and speak out what you want to say, I think I would have done that. But I think those days, some drivers are they say everything the same, the weekend in and out. So, but I think for Max, he say what he thinks, and in a perspective way. And I think that's good, It's also the emotions from drivers and teams. That's where Formula One is about, isn't it? So I think drivers have to stand up and say what they think. I think it's good for the sport, good for everybody.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And I think, I've probably sat on the fence. You know that expression where you don't say one thing or the other?
Yeah.
During my McLaren times, because I was always a little bit in fear that I could get fired.
Yeah, no, I had the same. You couldn't really say what you wanted to, because you always fear that they drop you after that. So that's why you shut up.
Yeah, it is challenging. How much influence do you think that you have today versus our time? Because we didn't have so much data, so the voice of the driver really would drive forward a direction with the engineers and designers. Do you still feel that you have that same level of influence in the direction of how the car is developed?
Well, to be honest, if they let's say they would stick a new front wing on, I don't need to look at the data to confirm. I prefer, of course, I go out, I say, more understeer, oversteer, whatever it does, more mid-corner grip or whatever. Then the data is just for them to look at, to confirm what I said, because I don't need to open my laptop, to say, oh no, it actually did that. That would be wrong. So it's what you practice already in go-karting. Of course, you didn't have wings, but you can simulate different kind of things, right? So that's what my dad, of course, sometimes he would send me out, he changed something, but he wouldn't tell me what. And then I had to feel what it was doing, and I think that's how you get a good understanding of new parts coming onto a car. But he also told me, if you don't feel anything, don't say anything, because don't lie.
That's the good thing, and that's how it in Formula One works as well.
Sometimes, you put something new in the car, and to be honest,
I think they should limit the data as well, because now every driver, he brakes. It should be natural. It should be his feeling against somebody else's feeling. Yeah. But now you can really work towards, towards another driver, and I think that should be, and that's why I think in the time of Niki Lauda or whatever, that was perfect. No data, and it was really the feeling of a driver, and that makes you going much faster than another driver. But those days, you have so much data, and they tell you, there you have to brake a couple of meters later, and more entry speed.
People do it even through the radio now during a race. They are comparing. I mean, when they, of course, talk to me sometimes, they tell me the Mercedes cars or whatever doing this and that. I'm like, great, nice. But when you have the same car, it's easier to compare. But yeah, I don't really like anyway looking at the data. I think at one point, when you just join Formula One, it's good because you need to learn a lot more. But now you feel it. You don't need to look at the data to make car changes. You speak to the engineer, you feel exactly, at least I have that with my engineer now, that we don't need to look at how I'm going through a corner. It's okay, we just do this or that, and it's just little things. Yeah, it works. I don't need to open my laptop throughout the weekend. It's just I go to my engineer and I say, okay, a bit of oversteer here, a bit of understeer there. Can we solve it in this way? And then he's like, should we try that or this? And then that's
because you're on the limit.
But also
you feel and you know
experience now.
And experience.
When I just joined Red Bull, you don't know how the car works, so you just listen a lot, and you let them, of course, in the beginning try stuff, and then I know this does that, and at one point, of course, the car, in terms of what you can change on the car, doesn't really change a lot over the years, so you know exactly what direction you want to go into. Of course, you don't get it right all the time, but like 95% of the time it works.
Yeah. So, Jos, you came up through karting. You're younger than me, so you came in a more competitive era of karting, and you obviously got Max into karting at a very early age. Do you find this was what you learnt there that you carried into your racing career and what you taught Max at that time, because you had the benefit of being very good and very successful in karting, is the backbone of future success, or do you think it's just part of the process?
I think it's part of the process, but I think as a young guy, they shouldn't start too early with data, because you have to learn it yourself. You have to figure out the limit yourself.
Did you have data logging on your car
when you raced? We had as well.
No, but with Max did. But when you were racing, did you have
No.
Yeah, because I never had data logging.
I think it started all when I went to Formula 3. Yeah. Then they had a little bit of data. I mean, they should have the engine RPM and speed and things like that. Yeah. So, but not much more.
It's funny, even in junior categories, right? The difference in countries of race teams where they come from. Some like Germany or whatever, they look less at data than, let's say, French. When we were testing in 2 liter. Yeah. It was quite a big difference in how the teams are operating in terms of the amount of time you spend on track, and some people would spend more time on looking at data. I think we were a bit more of the let's just drive, because you learn while driving.
Because a lot of teams at that time, they're looking at data for 45 minutes. And I said to them, I don't want that. 5 minutes is fine, but give them time on track. But that's what they need. They need to feel the car, make changes, but they were more into data. And I said,
I mean,
stop that.
You can look at the brake graph for 45 minutes, but I'm not changing it, am I? If I'm looking at I have to go out on track and understand myself, try different things, and then you learn.
Well, I think that perfectly brings us to the next point, where I think that I already have an idea of what your position will be. So when it comes to factory simulators versus real life testing, so the statement is that simulators in the factories are so good, you don't need these practice sessions in Formula One weekends anymore. So I've got a feeling already what your answer is going to be. We had a little bit of simulator technology in our career, but nothing like today. You didn't have?
No.
Oh, I had a bit of simulator, and I didn't enjoy it at all. So you never had that experience?
You get sick if it's too close to the screen.
Yeah, I can't do it.
Okay.
When he was behind his PlayStation when he was young, with its big screen in front of him, when I sat in the same distance, I had to go back because it was too close. I got dizzy. It didn't feel good. So I'm lucky that Luckily, I didn't have that simulator.
So you're not a simulator guy.
No,
you're
absolutely
definitely on track, and
Yes.
what you just said about your F3 time.
Yeah.
Now, you famously have done a lot of simulator racing, which is separate to this question's, I guess, more aimed at the advantages of teams that have got very sophisticated simulator programs to develop the Formula One car. So let's separate the two things. Talk about your passion for gaming, which clearly we're too old and get nauseous.
He's not bad. He tried
you
a few-
game? Okay.
No, he has a simulator.
Yeah, now I have a simulator, so I do it sometimes. But
Yes, too.
after 1 hour, I
That's
have
more
to
than me. I have one.
The secrets are coming out.
No.
Thank you, Carnex.
Yeah, no, but I have, but I don't practice a lot. Not.
But when he does, like,
So you're just naturally good, is that what you're saying?
Oh, no, he did a lap time, so I have a reference, and then.
He was within half a second on Spa with a GT car. It's a long track. I mean, half a second is not bad.
But that's why I wanted to be better on the GT car, so I had to practice a little bit to come closer.
Still competitive. Even between father and son.
Yeah.
Now, but it's very important on the simulator is the feedback you get through the wheel because you don't have G-force. Yeah. So the better that motor is, the more feedback you have, and the brakes, the brake pedal. That is where you get your lap time from. I think still I run a very stiff brake pedal to some, let's say, other proper sim drivers. But that's because I'm used to it in Formula 1. If I would run a softer brake pedal, it feels like I'm pressing it through the floor. But it's different. It's a bit different. Where in the car you feel it through your body. When the car is stepping out or whatever, everything is relying on the steering. So yeah, you have to get used to it. It's very. I mean, I'm part of Team Redline as well, and we have some very good sim drivers. And then you go through data. It's insane. Like I learned from that how precise you have to be with the steering inputs. Like don't overslip the tires. And some sim drivers are really good in finding that perfect slip angle. Yeah. And for me, it's quite easy to overslip. Like just go a bit too far. Where in real life, you feel that a bit more. That's too far or whatever.
But still, it makes you think. What he says there, I think he still learns of that. Yeah. And it's the same what we have with the GT cars. We are driving in the wintertime just for fun, but still you take some points out of that where you make you think for Formula 1.
It's different things what makes you go faster in a GT car. Where braking, for example, is very important. In Formula 1, because you have so much downforce, you sometimes forget how important braking is, the last bit of braking. And then when you go in a GT car, lower downforce, of course. It's all about if you miss your brake by half a meter or a meter, you lose half a second or whatever. In F1, that's maybe 200. But when you keep practicing those kind of things, it will improve in Formula 1 as well because you are more precise in what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that anything that's stimulating the brain, hand-eye coordination clearly has to be a good thing. The big question that people would love to know, of course, is will we ever see a professional sim racer be at the same level and winning in an actual real world?
The problem is that I think it's in the fear factor as well, where I mean you're not scared while driving, really, but a sim driver, for example, when you crash into a wall, you press restart and it's good. In real life, when you're going 300 or whatever or 250 through a corner, you're like, if I make a mistake now, I can end up in the wall, and I don't think they have that speed reference yet. And that takes, I think, a long time.
And I don't have the feeling. because you don't have the G-forces and feeling on the sim.
Yeah, you need
so
to be fit.
they have to, I think when you do both, when you start your career in go-kart and the racing, and then do the sim with it, I think that will help. But when you start with a sim, and then on a later age you think, I can be a racing driver, I think you're too late.
I think initially also you would get sick anyway because of the G. You're not used to those kind of G-forces, so you're like, you never did it in your life, so
then it's hard.
So I think it's very hard, but never say never. Maybe there's a very natural, gifted guy, for both.
So in the same way that we haven't seen the guy come from sim racing into single-seaters and have success, the professional racers within your team, you said it's called Redline, what sort of distance or time are you right there on the pace? Are you a tenth away? What sort of differences are we talking?
It's actually funny. So over last winter, actually even during the last few Formula One races, I had to qualify. Well, I wanted to qualify for it was a Porsche Super Cup, like the championship, like where all the best sim racers were participating. But only 40 guys make the cut, and 20 of them were already qualified from the previous year, so the top 20 was already confirmed. So there were 20 spots available to get into that championship, and you had to do 12 weeks of racing, and then that top 20 would go through, and I made it. I made the cut, so I was happy about that. And then in the second race weekend of that championship, before F1 even started again, because I couldn't do the full championship, I managed to finish second out of the 40 drivers, and my teammate won. And we were within a second. So I wouldn't say I'm exactly the same pace, but you don't need to be, because I have the experience in the race where I'm very consistent. But maybe over one lap in qualifying I'm behind, but then little race moments or a start, you can get them. But I'm not far behind, but also I've practiced a lot, so.
I'd say that's pretty impressive.
Good. I like
of the best sim racers in the world to be able to get into that top 20.
But I like it because it's pushing me as well. If the guy is faster, I don't like when someone's faster than me. So I'm on it. I'm trying to stay close, and it just keeps you sharp as well throughout the whole winter.
So this is interesting because I don't drive anything anymore. I'm retired, and I've got distant memories. You still go out on track for the thrill, the enjoyment. You share a car.
I think it's more the enjoyment.
Yeah, so how frustrating is it then when you know how quick you were when, let's say, you were younger? Now, can you grade how much you might have lost in getting older? And when Max goes faster than you, which I assume he does, how do you go between pride because he's your son and frustration because he's quicker?
It's frustration. Yeah. It's really because I know I can do a better job than I do now, but it has also to do with the training.
It's so simple. Just do.
Yeah, but I must say, since the last time I went back for training, but I don't have a goal. Yeah, the goal is to come closer to him, but that's fine because it's your son. But when I really have a goal, and I think you're physically fit and do things, I think I can find another half a second, but then probably I'm still about more than a half second away from him. But they do it so much easier. And now, when we were young, we jump in and we can go fast. But now you really have to work for it. You really have to look and use all your experience to come close.
He's not bad in fast corners. It's just the low speed where
he was always brave.
Yeah, he was very brave. Yeah.
Fast corners we comparable, and let's say, but it's all on the braking and on the action.
Yeah. How you
it's
brake.
the way they brake.
How you come off.
I cannot figure out, and I'm pushing the brake pedal way too hard, and I cannot, like he does.
The data.
He pressed the pedal less hard and brakes later. I cannot understand.
That is so frustrating.
That was a funny thing. So the very first time I drove a GT3 car, you have ABS, traction control. So I was driving, and I took a few laps, you're braking, and then I came in, and of course we were comparing data of what the engineer had, and I was braking like 40 bars less of what the reference was. He said, you have to hit the brakes hard. I'm like, no, because when you hit the brakes hard, you get into that ABS and left to, it's controlling for you.
Yeah.
And then the car is not doing what you want. So I was always against the ABS. You use it a little bit to not lock up, but you shouldn't be flat out into it. So I had that discussion for a few sessions with the guy, which I like. I like to have a discussion and of course try to prove I'm right. And then of course you put new tires, and then you just saw the deceleration. If you don't hit the ABS so hard, it's better because you are in control of what the car is doing. Also, when you turn in, the car is turning in instead of the ABS just being fully locking, and you can't turn in because the wheels are still it's still controlling. So
that was my problem a bit on the braking.
He's still in the ABS.
I can in a GT car. I cannot feel when the tire or when the wheels are starting.
Because you can't see them, of course.
This is one thing, but also you don't have that feeling in the brakes what you have in Formula One, where you feel and you know that you're on the limit. I cannot feel it in a GT car, and that makes it hard for me to brake. And they turn a lot quicker as well. They go early on throttle, and that it's really a frustration. But
love it. I can see the frustration.
And then I'm after a couple of laps. Physically, it's getting tougher. So I'm more fighting myself. Then.
So then you go for new tires.
No, I haven't. No, I leave that over.
He always says when we share the car, no, you take the new tires. I'll do the next run.
The thing is, because for me is the waste of time, because I'm not on the limit of what you can do with the car. So okay, you take the new tires, I'm fine with that. I do the comparison with older tires, but but I like it. But now I'm training a little bit more, and I feel a little bit fitter, and
It's also funny that he normally can't really run my setup on the car.
No,
he thinks it's too oversteery.
No, I have more oversteer with the same setup.
You say that
I need. I don't know. I need the front more stiff so I can really because of the front. And I think that's to do with the way I'm braking. I'm braking harder and
so the car
probably late, and then the rear is coming more.
So it'd be difficult for the pair of you to share a car in an endurance race.
I'll just have to drive a bit more understeer.
Yeah. Well, we will find a way. We'll find a way in the middle.
That would be good. That would be great to see. Right, moving on. We're moving on to media and social media. So there's a sensation today, or a belief today, that your average journalist at the track doesn't have a clue about Formula One. Now, it's always been a little bit like that,
it's always been like
some
that.
guys would be criticising us, and they've got
have
no idea
clue what they're talking about.
Yeah. So where do you think the balance is today versus our time? Now, when you read comments, about Max, do you feel it's more balanced, less balanced than when we were doing it?
Less balanced.
So it's more aggressive in the statements.
Yes, I think everybody can react, even when it's not a journalist or whatever. Everything can put everything on social media, and I think it's not clear and not fair. Also,
are you on social media personally?
Yes, I read them all.
Any response as well?
Some journalists I give a hard time. Yeah.
And you've earned the right.
I mean, it's not fair what they say sometimes, or they pretend that they know everything.
No, but I prefer they say it in my face, but they don't. Yeah. They would be too scared, I think, to say that in front of my face. But yeah.
There was when I first started, it was before social media, but they used to have this autocourse book, which at the end of the year, they rated the drivers. And beside my name, it said, David has an amazing ability to talk about the crash as if he wasn't behind the wheel at the time. So I went to the journalist and said, do you think I'm always making excuses? And he went, yeah, you always seem to have a reason why you crashed, other than it was your mistake. And I went, I didn't realise that. I thought I was always quite honest, but in his mind, I was always blaming something else. So sometimes it can be a wake-up call, but have you had to yourself challenge? Now, I can understand why Jos would challenge a journalist. He's earned that right as an ex-Formula One driver, and he's also your father. But do you take the time, do you make the effort if some guy's been disrespectful, or do you just let it go?
To be honest, I don't follow any racing on Twitter or Instagram. I prefer... you're anyway so much into that world, and anyway, I'm not interested in what other people say, so I'm like, I just follow football,
apart
MotoGP.
From Dad. You're listening?
Yeah, of course, my dad, people who like really know me, because if you don't know the person, I think it's anyway very hard to judge it's very hard to judge and how to respond to someone, so I'm like, I only listen to the people who actually really know me. Because that's, you can talk, I don't do everything perfect, nobody is perfect. You can always learn, you can always do better. But but it's also better to just not follow it.
Concentrate.
He does, he follows everything.
Yeah.
So sometimes he sends me stuff.
I just want to see how people talk about things.
Yeah.
and sometimes they called him something like silly or whatever. I said, why call him silly, you know? So I call him, mainly I call him.
Yeah.
So then I don't have evidence what I should have said. But I call him and I fight him.
Yeah. So there's obviously a difference in post-career. I've gone into working in television. When I was a driver, I was like, there's no way I'm working in television. As I got closer to the end of my career, I realized there was a business opportunity. Have you done much media work in retirement? You've done
nothing
absolutely
at all.
nothing.
No. I was busy with him.
Can you imagine him being a commentator?
I think you'd be brilliant because you would just say what you think. Whereas I tend to sit on the
must
fence
say
a little
when
bit.
It would be very
of course
straightforward.
When I watch the races, and and you have those commentators, I see a lot more than they see.
Yeah.
Because you race yourself.
Yeah.
So, but that's not my priority. It's him. I want to watch what's going on.
Yeah.
And when I stopped racing, I was on racing circuits with him all the time. What I loved to do. It was the best time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's great. I find it inspirational, actually. I've got a 12-year-old, or will be 12 tomorrow, and I'm not spending as much time at the kart track as you did together, but I'm building a trailer and getting more into this for the future because he loves to do it. And it's such a great father-son bonding experience. So, thank you for that.
Are you hard on him already?
I took him at one of the races before COVID-19. I said, I need to have a chat. And I took him in the car. And I said, son, what are you doing? That wasn't very good. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, your times and some of the things you did. And then he started to cry, and I felt so bad because I don't want him to cry. But equally, on the other hand, I felt good that he felt kind of embarrassed, because if you don't care, then you probably don't have the hunger. I don't know if you made him cry.
We've had a
David,
few moments.
I remember he was probably 8 or 9 or something, and after Wednesdays after school, because school was finished at 12, we went to the go-kart track, and it was in the winter time, it was freezing, so I let the van run so he could warm up, and then we did 10 laps. Cold. I said, okay, go warm up. And then 3 minutes later, where is he now? I said, come on, drive. I'm still. I said, I don't care, drive. And then he couldn't move his fingers, and I didn't care. I wanted to test things because I was building engines and chassis change and things like that. And I wanted to have the result because I was, I wanted to move forward. Yeah. But then he was,
barely hold the steering wheel.
I'm cold and things like that. And then when the fingers warm up, then again, and that's very painful. And I said, shut up, you're all...
Trying to make me talk, I think. But one of the funniest ones was, I think, in that final year in PFI, you remember?
Yeah.
And World Championship.
First session.
Yeah, I was driving like a potato, I swear. It was really bad.
I said, fuck, what is he doing? So I called him in. I was always in the tracks. So he came back and there
was trouble.
So he would stand up and I really smashed him on his helmet here. Bang! And he was like...
All the mechanics around, they were like, what happened there?
And then, and I said, what are you doing? He said, we're here, it's World Championship, and I think we can win it.
If you don't drive normal, we go home. I pack up everything.
David, qualifying first, he won all the heats, pre-final and final.
Nice wake-up call.
That's it. I think you call that tough love. So you had to be tough.
Yeah, but I knew his driving style.
No, but I needed it.
Yeah. And I can see, if he was making bad things or driving bad, I could see it immediately. And then it woke him up, and he needed that sometimes.
Well,
I think he still needs it now sometimes.
Does it?
He knows exactly.
Yeah, my father would say, if that's the best you can do, we may as well put the cart on the back of the van and go home.
Oh, I've done that as well.
Yeah.
Well, I think
I had that experience.
I think back then I needed that wake-up call sometimes, because my dad sometimes thought I was always, like, too relaxed, too easygoing. Yeah. But that was my way of not having pressure and just trying to get the best. I'm still like that. I think you, on a Tuesday or Wednesday before like the race weekend starts, you are more excited than me.
I know.
He texts me.
I know more what's coming than he does.
Yeah. Oh, he's like, so what? Are you looking forward to it? I'm like, yeah. But I'm like, on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, I'm like...
But were you like that when you were racing, or is it now because of
it's
the
more
journey
now
with
because
Max?
I'm with him.
Yeah. It's fantastic. I think it's really great the way you've developed this and the way you're continuing the journey. One more on the media side of things. If you could change something about media around the weekend today, what would you do?
Because you've got just throw it all in the bin.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's.
I think they should stop these silly things. What all these Formula One drivers do, you know. You see all this for social media, all the
these stupid gifs.
Stupid
you know,
things. I think it's not. I think a Formula One driver is tough and.
They should be the modern day gladiators.
Yes, yeah, but I don't like that. I prefer how it was.
Well, I already
20
hate to
years
make
ago.
the pictures before, like, you know, what you see in before every
pre-season.
practice session.
Or the silly
coming
thing.
up, you're like posing or
Yeah.
whatever. I'm like, just get rid of all that. Just let
I
us
don't,
drive.
you know, I think it's not Formula One worthy. So.
Yeah, you can understand why Liberty, the commercial rights holder, why the teams like all that, because they're trying to connect with this young demographic who are all think this is cool. But in actual fact, you would never walk up to a camera and go like that.
No.
It's not real.
I'm
so
just,
it's kind of
jump
Hollywood.
in the car.
Yeah.
Just jump in the car and do what you have to. Like that's
No,
what we have to
they
do.
should make this racing more exciting.
Yeah.
And then that's what everybody wants to see, and get rid of all this silly stuff.
Sure. And then probably the final question here, the most important one here, and the riskiest from my point of view, is to ask you, who's your favourite interviewer from all the TV stations that would chat to you?
One who actually has a clue about what he's actually talking
Well,
about.
it could be an example.
No, but that's why always talking to ex-racing drivers is the best.
Yeah.
Because they
I
understand.
think so too.
So you would possibly, I don't want to put
We always
words in
have
your
a good-
mouth,
we
but
always
would you
have a
say
good interview.
Channel 4 David Coulthard?
Yes,
potentially.
we always have a good interview.
Absolutely.
Could you actually say Channel 4 David Coulthard?
Channel 4 David Coulthard. There we go.
There you go, right. I'm going to
No,
that's my
that's
ringtone.
It is, isn't it? Because when you talk to someone, you feel when somebody understands exactly what you're talking about. It's so much better than having to talk to someone in like a very basic language.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we agree on that. Right, moving on to the next sort of headline statement here, that the young drivers get promoted to Formula One too fast right now. Now, this is particularly interesting in terms of your career because you arrived in Formula One capable and achieving winning a Grand Prix before you actually had a full-time driving license, if I understand. So I've always had this belief, if you're good enough, you're old enough, and if you're good enough, you're not too old. What would you say now, having come through that experience? They put an age limit, I think, of 18?
Yeah. Well, I think it depends a lot on how you're prepared in your younger years. I think you see in all sports, people are getting younger. So I think it's just all getting more professional from the start. That helps. So that's why you can't compare like 15, 20 years ago to now. Because I think everybody already from a very young age, they are first of all physically very well prepared. They have the right coaches around them and driving wise as well. There's a lot more info to it now, you know, onboards, data, and yeah, they become automatically already
Better prepared
into a season, you know.
Yeah. So you were young as well when you got your opportunity.
I think I was 23 when I came.
Uh,
I also did, I think, 2 years. I did.
22, no?
You hadn't done many car races by the time you came.
I think I did 49 before I came to Formula One. I did 1 year Vauxhall Lotus, 1 year Formula 3, and then I made the jump to Formula One.
And so in terms of experience, you didn't have the same experience as Max in terms of having started too early. Do you feel that...
I think for me it was too early afterwards, but at the time I felt it was right. But I think, yeah, 1 more year and better prepared for it. But it was different than him. I think he was prepared very well. Still had not so many car races, because I think we did, how many we did
33
in Formula
in F3. 33 races, because he had 3 races in the weekends.
Yeah, we did some days testing, and we did the winter time.
But the thing is, what I liked at the end of the day was I prefer to make the mistakes in F1 than have to deal in F2 or in F3. Once you're in there.
Yeah, I think for him was absolutely the right choice to step in Formula One.
So we know you can't really compare Michael Schumacher to Lewis Hamilton as a greatest driver because there were different eras. There was a crossover, but different phases. But people are always wanting to sort of look at how the certain generations compare. How would you respond to the general public on that?
Well, I think that's a difficult one. But I mean, Michael in his time, and I raced against him. I was in the same team.
He was his teammate.
Yeah, he was special, and he was motivated, and he was fit, and I think he was very fast. And And the same with Lewis, but I think not, that you not really can, who's the better one, or would you say who had more luck to drive the fastest car at that time? Both had, Yeah. I think Michael created it more towards his liking, He took the people from Benetton to Ferrari, so it was basically a little bit the same team. And I think with Lewis, he made the right call to go to Mercedes at the right time. Nobody thought beforehand that he was winning 6 titles with them. And I think he's absolutely top driver, but he also had the top material.
So if we look away from this era and look back to the time before you were in Formula One, did you have a driver that stood out for you that either inspired you or you particularly followed, or it wasn't like that for you? You weren't
I
a
think it was
fanboy?
more like Niki Lauda and Alain Prost.
Yeah, Prost was someone that I always thought he was very efficient in the way he drove. He did have a bit of a weight advantage at that time.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
which
still has.
He still has. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
So you're out there actually racing with Lewis. Michael, you know his records from the past. You know how your father can explain how he drove. When you look at Lewis, now I know you fear nobody. You attack the track and you do the best with what you have. When you have the opportunity, you've shown that you can beat the Mercedes and you can beat Lewis. Are you able, as a competitor, to recognise publicly his strengths and his weaknesses, or you prefer just to look at him as another competitor?
Now, the weaknesses are a little bit more difficult because you're not in the same team. Because I'm pretty sure if you would be in the same team, then you will see the weaknesses. But of course, of course he has the best car. He still has a teammate to beat, which he is doing. But he's also, very consistent in what he is doing for a long time now. I think, he doesn't make many mistakes himself. He doesn't crash. He always takes the points home. So that is something which is very important, and he does that very well. So he's definitely one of the best ever in Formula One. Just not only just pure championship-wise or whatever, but in terms of consistency. You've seen some other drivers make some silly mistakes or whatever. He's not really doing that. So that makes him tough to beat because you cannot have a crash, or you have to be always on it. But on the other hand, you're always starting on the first row, so the chance of a crash is not that big, instead of being on the second or the third or even further behind to try and catch up. So that's also another thing. Because once you're on the lead or second, when you're so comfortably out front with a strong car, it's very hard to make a mistake. So
one thing that I've been impressed with is how, rather than getting frustrated that the Mercedes has continually been, let's say, the benchmark in Formula One, you take out of every weekend the best performance you can and you seem upbeat and positive. So it doesn't seem to me that you're going, well, if I had that car, I would win. Now, can you maybe explain to people at home, how do you rationalise your natural desire to want to taste the champagne as first place every time versus Formula One is a sport where the car plays a huge part in whether you can win or not?
Yeah, initially I was like that. You would get a bit frustrated about it because you have that belief and okay, it's gonna happen, and then every year, just not. So this year, for example, I said to myself, you know what? I can be frustrated all the time about not winning, but maybe I should just see it in a way. Okay, it's not possible, but I'm just gonna try to do the best I can and get the best out of myself and really find that enjoyable. And that's what I'm just trying to do now. I can be happy with second or third in a qualifying when you know that you had a really good lap, or get the fastest lap in the race when you are a bit down on in terms of lap time, of course, to them. I think that at the moment is making me happy. Of course I want to win, but to get frustrated all the time, I don't think you can last a full sean like that. So.
Yeah, you've got to save your energy. Is that something that you can share? Because again, as a father, you want the best for your son.
I can't. No, this beginning of the season, I was really, I wouldn't say angry, but disappointed.
Yeah.
Because, you hear always the stories, blah, 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 and then it doesn't happen, and I was really a bit angry that it again didn't happen. So, but the good thing is we always discuss things together with Max and Raymond, and Raymond discuss it with Helmut, and then we sit together and things like that. So,
well, the good thing is that we can be very open to everyone in the team,
and that's the good thing. We can really talk about it, and but also we made the decision for a long-term agreement with them, and to give them the chance to, that we win the World Championship. So so we have a go next year again, but I would love to challenge them and to fight for the championship.
But it must give you some comfort knowing that there's no doubt Max has all of the qualities to win that championship. I know it doesn't mean he's physically got his hand on the trophy,
but I'm convinced of that.
I almost stole it in Paris last time.
Yeah.
I found it in the room. I was there, and we were changing, and suddenly the trophy was just standing there after the prize giving. I was like,
take it, put your name on it.
And that's why Formula One has to change. It should be all come closer, more overtaking, more racing, and have different people on the front row, and and they have the others on the second or third row, and then there will be more mistakes as well from the best ever drivers, and that's how it should be.
Yeah.
A little bit like MotoGP, They have 8 or 9 races with 8 different winners. Yeah. That's what we love to see in Formula One as well.
Yeah. Well, I think we can all agree on that. One thing I think that we should recognise, that having this opportunity to bring you both together is because of one of your partners, carnext.com, and therefore it would be inappropriate if I didn't ask you about cars and what you would buy for the road. So putting to one side your personal relationships with Honda and Aston Martin and all the rest of it. I give you a certain amount of money right now. What are you going to go out and buy?
So depends. To be honest, I really enjoy driving like an SUV, a bit sporty. The Urus. It's
good looking.
It's fast. It's good looking. It has space. It's honestly my favorite car at the moment. Of course, sports cars. Great, like Porsche cars and stuff like that, GT3, GT2 RS, whatever. These are very nice cars. It just depends also what you need, right? But of course, on pure performance, you would always go for something like that. I mean, brakes are good. Like, comes close to like a proper, race car. So.
Yeah, and you probably don't shop online for any sort of hot hatches or city cars, but if you did, have you got something in mind?
To be honest, my dad, like when we were in go-karting, the amount of times we were spending on all those websites looking at cars, so yeah.
Yeah, I like cars a lot, of course. Like
you get to drive, you do enjoy driving, so...
Yeah, I love to drive on roads. I didn't mind even in a van, I drove thousands of kilometers. 100,000 a year, every year for 10 years. So, but I love it. I love out on the road.
So you're the perfect customer for carnext.com. You're the sort of person that will just be surfing to see where the next opportunity is.
It needs to have to put a caravan behind.
Yeah, absolutely.
No.
Well, they cater a lot now. They're represented in more than 20 countries, which is kind of where Formula One is. So it's a perfect partner for you. So just a little word on working with them.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we started the partnership this year. Of course, what happened in the world didn't make it very easy, but everybody is very understanding, and so far it's a very enjoyable partnership, and I hope, of course, that we can continue it for a very long time, because they are, great people.
Yeah, well, it's great to see the logo in the front of your helmet.
Technically,
they get to cross the line before you do, because it's in front of you.
Just a little bit ahead of me.
His feet are on front side.
See that? Your dad's, he's got it covered everywhere, hasn't he? Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. You've been more than generous inviting us into your home here in Monte Carlo. We wish you all the best for the remainder of the season. And to all those on carnext.com watching, I hope you enjoy the podcast.